All right, so hopefully everybody see this okay on the screen? If you need to get closer, you can. I have old eyes, and I can't do this anymore without a magnifying glass. So I bought a magnifying glass that has a camera in it, which means that I can see it and you can see it, and you don't have to crowd around me to do it. It's like awesome. So you're going to see me like staring through this. If you really want to get a good laugh, you can look at me this way. But that's why I just like. Oh, too bad. All right, so in your little bag here, you have a couple of things. You have 4 connectors, which are Neutrik NC3FXX connectors. You have 2 of those, and you have 2 Neutrik NC3MXX connectors. These are XLR connectors. You have 2 of each, but you're only going to make 1 cable. The idea is you're probably going to melt a couple connectors before you get this right, so I'm giving you extras. If you don't need the extras, just give them back to me and we'll use them for a different cable some other time, okay? So you got 2 of each connector. You also have a spool, a little roll of cable, and you have a little piece of heat shrink tubing with UNCSA sound design on it, okay? Because the cables you make, here's the ultimate test, like, of whether the cable is good enough, is whether you and I both agree that we would trust that cable on a show that comes out of our shop. So you got to be willing to stake your professional reputation on the quality of that soldering job. And we're going to put the school logo on it. It's going to go into the shop, and it's going to get used on a real show. And if it doesn't work, your reputation is ruined. This cable is made by a company called Belden, and the product number is 8412. Belden 8412. It's my favorite kind of microphone cable because it's super durable. It'll take a beating, but because it's so durable, it's a real pain in the butt to work with. So that's what you're going to do. So first thing is, go ahead and slide this little piece of heat shrink on there, because you can't put it on after you've soldered the connectors. So go ahead and slide it onto your cable and run it through there a little bit. And then you're going to want to get let's do the socket connector. So find the NC3FXX connector. And I love the way Neutrik does these because the bags are perforated. You just sort of open them up real quick. And you want to get the boot out. That's the boot. Because this is another thing you can't put on after you've soldered the connector. So you're just going to put this thing through the cable. At least once, each of you will forget to put the boot on some cable. And you're going to bring it to me, and I'm going to say, it's perfect, it's glorious. Put it together, and then you're going to go, oh, shoot, I forgot the boot. And you're going to have to cut it off and do it again. So go ahead and slide that boot on. Just like that. Right, the tapered end goes away from the end of the cable. Other way, Chalisa. Yep, exactly. See that? All right. Now we got to take this apart. Now this is a watch first before you do it, okay? You're going to get your knife out, or if you got the box cutter, like that's cool too. Whatever you've got, you're going to get that out now, and you're not going to cut your finger off. Okay? Now, what you want to do is, if you look at this cable, there's like layers to it. So you can see there's like an outer jacket, this black outer jacket, and then there's like something thin in there, and then there's two wires, a black wire and a white wire. So we have to like take this apart in layers to get to the stuff that we want. The first thing we want to do is we want to take off this outer jacket, this outer black jacket. And we have to do it without cutting into the layer beneath it. So we got to be real careful. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to cut 1 inch off. Now, if you are really persnickety about stuff like this, and you want to measure exactly 1 inch, knock yourself out. I think I've got a ruler here somewhere. But I will tell you this. Between that knuckle and that knuckle of my index finger is about 1 inch. And that's what I use usually to measure, is that. Okay, and that's about as specific as you need to get. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to position my knife pointy side up, and I'm going to lay the cable on top of it. And I'm not going to push really hard. I'm just going to put really light pressure on this, and then I'm going to spin the cable around. And I'll see what I did is I just scored it, right? But I didn't cut all the way through it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this over, and it'll split that thing open a little bit more. You see? And then I can kind of like rest my knife on there and try to get the rest of the way through. And you can see there's a layer of twine in there that I've started to expose, and that's good. So once I start seeing that gray twine, then I stop, and I go get I turn it a little bit, and we cut the other side, and I'm not like really sawing at this thing. I'm just literally laying the blade on it and kind of rocking it back and forth a couple of times with mild pressure until it splits open. Nope, see there, I see the twine now. And then I'll go to the other side. Do that. Yep. And I'm going to go all the way around until I have gotten through the whole jacket. Okay, I think I've done it. And I'm going to close the knife. And now we're ready to go. Now I need to take this jacket off. And I'm going to do that with use my pliers, and I'm going to kind of dig underneath of this and try to get a hold of it here. And it's okay if it splits apart, but I'm going to just pull this off. And now you got all that twine that you saw before. It should come off like this in one little twist. Okay? And you see now underneath the twine is this paper. And that you're just going to pull off. And now I need to get rid of this twine. I'm just going to cut that off with my scissors. So the little scissors I had you get, you're just going to go in here and cut that off. There you go. How are we doing so far? Any questions? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, this is braided wire. It's really thin wire that's been braided. This is called the shield of the cable. And its job is to collect all of the electromagnetic interference that might be in the air or radiating from cables next to it or stuff like that. And it's going to collect all of that and send it to ground without letting it go into the signal wires that are inside. So it's like it protects it. We need to unpick this braid. and solder this to one of the pins on the connector. Here's how we're going to do it. First thing is, you're going to kind of just run your finger across the edge of this and try to get a few of those wires to stick out a little bit so you can grab onto them. Because underneath of here you can see there's some string that's also braided, and you don't want the string. So I'm going to try to separate this first little bit of it out without getting any of that string. And this is where your pick will come in really handy. So looks like I've got a couple little wires there. Okay, so once I've got them kind of like split out like that, I'm going to now grab onto that string because I really don't want to get it mixed up with the wire. And now, while I'm holding that string, I'm going to unpick all this braid with my pointy pick. Try not to let go of the string, because if you do, then it'll get mixed up with the wire. You can recover from that, but it's a pain in the butt. So if you can avoid it, that's great. Oops, see, look, I got one little string in there mixed up in it. See if I can get that out of there. Get out of there. That stuff will melt when you solder this wire in a really gross way. So you can be a little rough with this. You need to be real delicate. But you're just going to unpick all of this. Separate all these tiny little wires. Okay. I like to kind of dig down there a little bit beneath the jacket just to make sure I've really unpicked this thing. There's no like little braids that are going to get in my way. And all right, I think that's getting pretty good. So now I'm going to just try to, while I'm still hanging on to the string, I'm going to gather all these wires together on one side. Kind of try to find a natural part here. And gather it all there, and I'm going to really kind of give it a good pull to get them all to line up on this one side. Now that I've got the wires separated, now I can deal with this string, and that just unpicks really easily. And you're just going to cut that off. So there's the two inner wires called the inner conductors, the black one and the white one. You don't cut those off. You want to keep those. That's where your sound goes. All right, and I'm just going to go in here, and I'm going to cut off all of this string. As much as I can. Okay. Make sense? Questions? All right. Now what I got to do is I got to turn this into one big thick wire. So I'm going to try to straighten it out really good. And then I'm going to pinch all the way here at the end where it comes out of the jacket, and I'm going to start twisting. Twisting and pulling. Twist and pull. You should feel this on your fingers. You want to twist this into as tight of a wire as you can and as uniform as you can. See that? All right, now what I got to do is I got to do what's called tinning this. I got to tin this, which means I'm going to solder this into a solid wire that I can then put into the connector. So I'm going to use my clamp. I've got to have you guys get clamps. Get clamps in a second. I'm going to stick this in my clamp with this this is called now my drain wire, kind of pointed down. Let's see if I can give you guys a good view of that. Okay. Now we get to do some soldering. So this is a brand new solder tip. Some of you have new ones, some of you have old ones. If the old one doesn't work, we'll fix it. But because it's new, I just want to put some solder on it and let it kind of season that tip a little bit. Kind of let it smoke and bubble a little bit. And then I'm going to clean it with the little brass sponge. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. Now here's where the real skill comes. You ready? I'm going to get some solder on this tip and then rest it on this wire until it starts soaking in there. And as it starts soaking in there, I'm going to start working my way down. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it to soak all the way through. Now, I did not paint the wire. Solder is not paint. I did not coat this wire. I saturated it. Okay, that solder permeated all the way through to the inside of this thing. This is now a solid wire. So the other thing you notice is I don't have the solder globbing and bubbling up here. I moved fast enough that it didn't do that. And I moved slow enough that it didn't do that. If you move too fast, it'll skip and glob. If you move too slow, it'll glob and pool, and you don't want that. The other thing that will happen if you go too slow is the solder will wick up into the jacket. And that's not good either, because that creates a potential stress point on this cable that could become a problem later. Okay? So this will be some practice. I just made that look really easy, but it's not. You're going to want to really practice that a lot. So a couple of tips is try to point the wire down and let gravity work in your advantage so that the solder is naturally wanting to go away from the jacket, not towards the jacket. That'll help a lot. All right. So that looks pretty good. And we're going to see how good a job I did in a second. Now I need to take care of these internal wires. Now, who got, so I have this wire stripper. Who got the other kind? Did anybody get the other kind? Can I borrow it? Because I want to show you guys how that works, because it works differently from mine. Oh, you got, no, that's the one, like the one I have. I want one of the different ones. Oh, perfect. Yes, this one. Okay. So I'm going to show you how both of them work. So if you look at this the way it's labeled here, it tells you what to do. So this one says solid on this side, and STR, looks like an O. I would have guessed D, but it stands for stranded wire. What we're working with here is stranded wire. And it is 22 gauge wire. And so what you want to do is you want to look on the side for the stranded side, and you want to figure out which hole is the hole for 22 gauge. And in this case, it's the last hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of this jacket off. So 1/2 inch is what I'm going to take off of this. So I'm going to position the wire in that hole for the 22, about halfway through, and then I'm going to squeeze it. And then there's a little bit of a wrist motion here. Once you squeeze it, you're going to kind of like do a little twist, twist, pull. And it'll come right off, okay? And hopefully, if you use the right hole, you won't take any wire with it. That's the dream. If you take too much wire with it, you're going to want to cut it off and do it again. You're going to have to start all the way over. But hopefully you won't have to do it. So once you get that jacket off, then you're going to twist this really good, really tight again. You can see I did get one little wire off. That's all right. Now, if you have this kind, here's what you're going to do. Same thing, you're going to take half of it off. So I'm going to position it so that the halfway point is between these two jaws. I'm going to make sure it's there, and then I'm going to just really quickly and aggressively pull, squeeze the thing together, and it'll pop it off, okay? Either tool is fine. Either will get the jacket off. All right, now I got to do the same thing to these wires that I did to this one. I got to tin them. So I'm going to stick it into my little clamp here. I'm going to point them, face them down again, just like before. And I'm going to tin them by saturating them completely, okay? And then we'll do the other one. Come on, little guy. There we go. All right. You ready? Moment of truth. We're going to see how I did. I got to cut these now. So these internal ones, I'm going to cut about 2/3 of this off. Leave about that much. Okay. A little less than 1/4 of an inch, maybe. And then this big drain wire, you want to cut that so it is, you see where the edge of this jacket is for these little wires? You want to cut the big wire at that point so that it's a little bit shorter than the other two wires. And here we go. I'm going to cut that off with my flush cutters. Now look at the inside of that. I'm going to run my fingers across it and see if I can get any wires out. I can't because it's one solid wire now. Okay? If you cut that off and wires start splitting, you didn't do it right. That's a cut it off and do it again. All right, this sucker's ready to go. Here's the connector. There are, each of these little lugs are labeled. So you've got pin, well, let me turn it this way. So this is pin 1, that's pin 2, that's pin 3. And there are numbers on there, you'll see them if you look at them. You want the white wire to go to pin 2. You want the black wire to go to pin 3. And you want that shield drain wire to go to pin 1. Okay? And I did put that list on Canvas if you forget that pin out. So I'm going to, white goes to pin 2, black goes to pin 3, and shield goes to pin 1. Everybody good? All right, so I'm going to stick this little connector in my clamp so that the lugs are facing up, because there's like, it's like a little bowl that holds the wire, and you want the bowl facing up so you can lay the stuff in it, okay? Flip it upside down, then it's not going to work really well. Now what I want to do is I want to tin these lugs, get them ready to accept the wire. And I do that by sticking my little soldering iron on that, heat it up, and then start feeding a little solder in there. Not very much, just a little bit. and then letting it cool there. And I'm going to do that for each one. You want to see it kind of like pool into there. If it pools, that means that the actual lug was hot too. It's possible to melt the solder and just drop it on there without ever heating up the metal on the connector, and that solder is not going to stay there. That'll be called a cold solder joint, and that connector will fail you every time. So you want to make sure you're heating up the pin a little bit too, so that the metal fuses to it. Okay. All right, I'm ready. Here we go. I want the white one to go to pin 2, black one to go to pin 3, and then the shield to go to pin 1. Start with the white wire. I'm going to heat this lug back up, and when I see the solder melt, then I'm going to stick it in there. You want the jacket of that wire to touch the edge of that pin. Okay, you don't want any wire sticking out, because you're about to twist this thing all up, and you don't want those wires to short. Now, this is where your pliers come in really handy, because now this wire is hot. Don't touch it when it's hot. So I'm going to grab the black wire with my pliers, and I'm going to do the same move. I'm going to heat up that pin. And we'll stick it in there. Oops. Doing this from the magnifying glass is weird. All right, that's not a very good job. Let me see how bad that was. Well, it'll do. I think I need to clean off. There's like dust on this thing. I couldn't quite see what I was doing. You know what? I'm going to try to heat it a little bit more and cool it in there. Oh, that's better. Oh, so much better. Okay. All right. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to take this little drain wire now, and I like to put a little bend right in the end of it, just to line it up with that pin, okay? And I usually do this. I hold the jacket and push this in, but you might want to use your pliers. You can decide what's better for you. But same deal. I'm going to heat this up. Slide it in there. Now this one obviously doesn't have a jacket on it, but it's a much thicker wire, so you're going to want a bit more heat here to make sure you melt the solder that's saturated that wire. And there it went, it pooled. You see it? Once you see it flow, that means that wire melted. And that's when you take the soldering iron off, and then it'll cool, and it'll be all ready to go. Now, the important part is, look what's going on. If I pull on this, which part of it is taking that strain? The drain wire, which is the biggest, thickest, strongest part of it. You don't want the little thin wires taking the weight. That's why you cut that drain wire shorter. That's a little pro tip. People who soldered a lot of cables will always solder that drain wire a little shorter than the other ones, so it's taking the strain. You go buy a couple of cables at Guitar Center and take them apart, you will see that drain wire is just the same length as the other ones. All right, this one's ready to go. So I'm going to put it back together now, put the whole thing together. This is the strain relief, and I'm going to stick this on here. And you're going to line up the edges of this with the little grooves on the connector, like that. And then I'm going to slide this on there. And come on, get in there. There it goes. Make sure that the end comes all the way flush to the edge there. And then you take your boot, you screw it in. Get it good and tight. There you go. That's ready to go. That's done deal connector right there. Okay? Now you do it.